All right. Good evening, everybody. And here we finally have it. The talk on thyroid, or the webinar on the thyroid. People have nagged me for so long for this. Something that I talk about often, but when I talk about it in conjunction with the whole endocrine system. So tonight I'm going to be focusing on the thyroid gland and what can go wrong with it and what you can do to help your body correct the situation. So we're going to take a look at the thyroid, what the function of the thyroid is, what happens when your thyroid doesn't work properly. We're going to take a look at traditional allopathic, which means the traditional medical route that you will normally be told to go. And then we'll take a look at what you can do naturally to help your body repair the thyroid. And that's what everything we do, our 30-day detox, our 100 days to health, our 365 programs, everything that we do on our webinars is not about telling you to stop medication. It's not about telling you that some miracle cure is going to save you. There are no miracles other than the human body as far as I'm concerned. The human body is the most incredible piece of equipment. It's amazing that when we're born, we don't get an operations manual, and yet we can get up and walk, and we can start talking just by listening to people. The fact that our ears work without us instructing them to work so that we can start talking, and then all the while you're actually in your mother's womb, that thyroid gland is formed, it's starting to function in the womb, and once you're born, your thyroid gland is working. Your thyroid gland controls things like bowel function. It controls mental clarity. It controls muscle tone and muscle strength. So it's there from the beginning. You are born with it. It's there before you're born. And your body, when it's working together and it's working properly, that thyroid works beautifully. So we're going to take a look at, let's take a look at what the thyroid is. So firstly, your thyroid is a small organ that's located in the front of your neck. If you swallow hard here, you can actually, if your thyroid is enlarged, it actually can see an Adam's apple in men particularly. You can see it move up and down. In fact, one of the ways to test your own thyroid is to put your neck back like this, look at a mirror, and then swallow some water. And you could possibly see if they're nodules. It's described as one of the ways to do it. I'm not telling you to go and self-diagnose, but if you're worried about it, if it's enlarged, for example, if you've got like goiter, it can be very enlarged. And we're going to take a look at that. It doesn't really matter what's wrong with your thyroid. The way to approach it is the same way, because you've got a thyroid that's sick and not working properly. So very often people will say, well, I'm hyperthyroid. I've got hyperthyroidism. And yet somebody will say I'm hypothyroidism, or I have Graves' disease, thinking, well, my condition is different, and so you're going to deal with this a different way. No. You're going to do the same thing. You're going to allow your body, you're going to create the right environment in which your body can repair the thyroid itself. That's what you're going to do. It doesn't matter what the condition is. The condition that you have normally relates back to things like your genetic makeup, whether you're male or female, what your diet is like, what your lifestyle is like. All those things will affect the way your thyroid works, okay? So it's a small gland that's basically wrapped around your trachea or your voice box, and it's shaped like a butterfly. It's smaller in the middle and then bigger on the outside, two wide wings that are extend around the side of your throat here. It is a gland that's part of the endocrine system. Now, your endocrine system controls everything that goes on in your body. It controls all your hormones. It controls your bladder, your bowels, your brain. It controls how much cholesterol you produce. It controls your weight. It controls your liver function, kidney function, heart function, your blood pressure, your blood sugar, whether or not you've got allergies. So it controls like everything that goes on in the body. So your thyroid actually helps to make hormones that control a lot of those functions. So you must never look at the thyroid individually, and that's the mistake a lot of people make. They actually look at the thyroid and say, oh, my thyroid's sick, there's something wrong with it, let's treat the thyroid. Instead of saying my thyroid is part of the endocrine system, and let's look at what's wrong with the endocrine system. It's a little bit like your car's not working, and you take it into the garage and the guy says it's definitely your air filter, and that's all he does is he just changes your air filter in the car and nothing else. The spark plugs don't get changed. Nothing else is checked up in the car. And then I was just listening to somebody today, and they drove away from the garage after having something fixed. And just as she was going down the road, it packed up again. And that's very often what happens. You start treating the thyroid, you just focus on the thyroid, which doesn't make any sense, really doesn't. Because it's part of, as I say, this amazing endocrine system. And so if the thyroid's not working properly, something else could have been wrong. Possibly the pituitary gland, which controls your pituitary gland, is in your brain, and it's the managing director of your entire endocrine system. So if the pituitary gland's not working properly, that could be why your thyroid's gone. Or your pituitary gland might not be working in a certain other area, and maybe it's something like the adrenal glands, or it's the ovaries, or the testes, or the parietal cells in the digestive tract. They're all part of this amazing system. Think of it like an engine of a car, or like an orchestra. If the percussion department's not working properly, it's just not going to sound right. Although it's not quite the same. It's more like a car, because you think you're focusing on one thing, but you should be looking at overall at absolutely everything in the car, because you could fix something here and something else goes wrong. And it's not so much fixing. The difference between a car and the human body is phenomenal. The human body can repair itself, and a car cannot repair itself. So it's very important that you understand that your body is capable of repairing itself if you allow it to. And very few of us understand this, because we've been taught to treat symptoms with medication or surgery or herbs or homeopathic stuff. Let's treat the symptoms as opposed to what caused the problem. So we're going to take a look at the traditional way that the traditional medical route of how they look at the thyroid, what actually causes it. And it's quite bizarre the way they look at it, but we'll get there now. And I'm not ripping off the medical profession at all. Please understand that if I'm in a car accident, in fact, my daughter Meredith was in a severe car accident a couple of weeks ago, and she's walking around with a neck brace and she has to have surgery. I am not going to go and put her on, get her eating carrot juice. Yes, it'll help support her immune system and her healing, but two of her vertebrae actually broke, so she has to actually have surgery to remove the broken pieces and to replace it with some bone from her hip. And in the meantime, I'm praying that God heals her miraculously through her body, if that's possible. Anything's possible with God, but for now, if I was in a car accident and I was bleeding to death, I need a doctor to stitch me back together and stop the blood, okay? So doctors are necessary. We need them. But what happens is we've transferred all our faith onto the medical profession, and then we get mad when what they do doesn't work for us. They're doctors of medicine, and what they do is they take medicine and they treat your symptoms with medicine, or they treat your symptoms with surgery, okay? So you've got to understand that. They're not there to advise you on your marriage or to counsel you on something else. They're qualified as doctors of medicine to treat symptoms. That's what they do. And when you understand that, you know when to go to the doctor and when to allow your body to repair itself, okay? So what does your thyroid do? Gosh, it's very involved in a lot of things, but right at the top of the list, you probably put metabolism. It controls the thyroid hormones that you produce control your metabolism. And metabolism is the process where your food body is transformed or changed into energy. Now, this energy is used throughout your entire body to keep many of your body systems working correctly. Think of your metabolism as a generator, okay? That's how you think of it. Generator is something that generates energy. You plug it in, you put diesel in it, or you put petrol in it, and you switch it on, and it creates even more energy. It takes in raw energy, which is basically the food we eat, and it uses it to power it into something bigger. Okay, if you just put food into you, it's not going to do anything. Your body, that's how amazing your body is. You have to eat, and then your body uses those nutrients to actually generate something even bigger and correct and stabilize your metabolism. So your thyroid controls your metabolism with two particularly very specific hormones. We know them as T4, which is known as thyroxine, and that contains, we can go into the details of it, 4 iodide atoms. That's why it's T for thyroid and 4 because it's got 4 iodide atoms. So you understand the terminology. And T3, which is known as triiodothyronine, okay? The other one's thyroxine, and that's your T4, and triiodothyronine is your T3, and that contains 3 iodide atoms. So you basically know why it's called T3 and T4. It's pretty simple. Sounds very impressive when you just rattle off these names and things. And then I think the thing is that we're not very comfortable with medical terminology or how the body works. And the more we learn about the human body, the less fear we have. Ignorance is not bliss. We need to understand, and you don't have to become a medical doctor, but honestly, today it's so easy. You can go online and Google, what does the thyroid do? And you can read all about it, and you can just, there are different sites. But usually the medical sites are very good, or you can even go to Wikipedia. It can tell you what the thyroid does. It's important. Teach your kids what their thyroid gland does, because as you learn which things actually upset the thyroid and which things that we do actually encourage proper thyroid functioning, and you make your kids, for example, aware of how their thyroid works, well, they're going to grow up not being fearful of anything and then know my thyroid's not working properly. I need to do A, B, C, D, and F. So it's knowledge is power. In the world we're living in now, your knowledge is power, and it's so freely available everywhere. You may not know immediately what to do, but at least you know what you're dealing with, okay? So it's very important. So these two hormones are created by the thyroid, and they tell the body cells how much energy to use. When your thyroid works properly, it'll maintain the right amount of hormones to keep your metabolism working perfectly at the right rate all the time, okay? Right, now this is all supervised. I said this earlier on, all supervised by your pituitary gland, which is situated at the center of your skull. You kind of drill down there and there, kind of below the brain, inside there. It's actually difficult to actually pinpoint it, but it's right in the middle. It's probably right in the middle to protect it. So it's not on the edge. Like if you banged your head, your pituitary gland's too far away from it to be injured. So it's probably one of the last things that would get injured. But it monitors the entire endocrine system, but it also monitors and controls the amount of thyroid hormones in your bloodstream. So if you go and you have a thyroid test to see how much T3 and T4 you're producing, and then you treat the thyroid, but it actually could be a pituitary problem. And that's the problem. You cannot just treat the thyroid gland, okay? So when the pituitary gland senses a lack of thyroid hormones or a high level of hormones in your body, it'll adjust the amounts with its own hormone. The pituitary gland produces a hormone called TSH, your thyroid stimulating hormone. So the pituitary gland is so smart, you didn't even get an operation manual when you were born. You didn't get one as an adult either. So it's not like okay, let me think really hard. I'll go and meditate and I'll tell my pituitary gland to produce enough thyroid stimulating hormone. The thyroid gland, when the environment in your body is right, produces just enough of the right thyroid stimulating hormone to get that thyroid going to produce enough T3 and T4. But it's all connected. You can't really disconnect it from all the other the body. All right, TSH, your thyroid stimulating hormone, will be sent to the thyroid, okay, and it'll tell your thyroid what to do. So what is thyroid disease, okay? Now, there's different kinds of diseases, and as I said earlier on, it doesn't matter which one it is. It matters whether you create the right environment for your body to repair itself. It's a general term, medical term, that and it's a condition or general medical condition that keeps your thyroid from making the right amount of hormones. Your thyroid typically makes hormones to keep your body functioning normally, okay? When it makes too much thyroid hormone and your body uses energy too quickly, okay? That's called hyperthyroidism. And when you have hyperthyroidism, your metabolism's too fast, and then you could find that you're actually very underweight and you can't put on weight, okay? So you're using energy too quickly, and what it'll do is make you tired. It can make your heart beat faster. It can cause you, as I said, to lose weight without even trying, and it can make you feel very anxious. Your heart's beating faster and you can have anxiety. So what do we do when we have anxiety? We go to the doctor and he gives us anti-anxiety medication. Have you fixed the problem? I'm not saying all anxiety is from your thyroid not working properly, but very often it could be the case. A good doctor will say, well, let's test your thyroid as well. But again, there are things that can push your heart rate, things that we put into our bodies that can affect the way our pituitary gland and our thyroid gland works, so that our metabolism is too fast or it's too slow. We'll take a look at that. And then we'll go and treat the thyroid. Instead of standing back, you got to take a step back and look at the entire body and see how it works, okay? So, right, on the flip side of this, your thyroid can make too little hormone, okay? This is called hypothyroidism. So hyper is too fast, that's Hyper, and hypo is Hypo, and that is too slow. And very often what happens with that, you can also have no energy as well. It's one of the side effects as well, but you'll find you put on weight, you can't lose weight, you could find you suffer from constipation, you can find that you've got brain fog, it's just a lot of things. You can also find that you're very sensitive to temperature, your hands and feet are cold all the time. And that's a wonderful thing about living a healthy lifestyle and allowing your body to repair itself. I remember my whole life suffering from cold hands and feet to such an extent that my fingers would get really numb in winter. And we don't live in a climate where there's thick blanketed snow on the ground at all. If there is snow, it's right at the top of the mountains. I think the lowest our temperatures go down to here is about 6 degrees centigrade, which is it's not freezing. And that's very seldom. So what happened is, as I started to change my diet and my lifestyle, so my metabolism changed, my thyroid started working properly, and my hands and feet are never cold or hot. It's just, they're not too, some people's hands and feet can sweat all the time, others are just cold all the time. And that's what's nice. Your hands might get a little bit cold, but not this numbing cold where you get into bed at night, you can get out of the bath and into bed and your hands and feet are cold. So it's one of the problems is, you don't manage temperature. You either get uncomfortably hot or uncomfortably cold. So you're not managing temperature very well. So the typical approach is to say that the thyroid gets damaged by a variety of conditions. And the traditional way is to say it's genetic. And so if your mother had Graves' disease, chances are you're going to have Graves' disease. But really what we inherit is the lifestyle. We inherit living the same lifestyle, same diet, the same habits. And so very often that can be why we develop it. What we do know is from people like Dr. William Lee, who was producing medication, very expensive medication to stop tumors forming, angiogenesis, where blood vessels are actually feeding tumors, for example. And so this medication he was involved in developing cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Nobody could afford it, really. And so he started looking at foods. But what he found is that foods, things like strawberries and tomatoes are two of the first they looked at, and then they looked at just about every plant food. They all are anti-angiogenesis. But what they found is when people start eating a lot of plant food, you can actually change your genetic expression. And that's one of the reasons why when you start eating a whole food plant-based diet, that you can find that things that you had, like my husband had high blood pressure because his entire family has high blood pressure, and I had allergies and hay fever and bipolar disorder, which were genetic. But by changing our lifestyle and diet, we changed our genetic expression. So all those symptoms went away, and we've been in remission for over 30 years, both of us, not having any of these genetic diseases that our families had, okay? So it's very important to realize that very often we kind of write ourselves off and we say, well, it's genetic, there's nothing I can do about it, because doctors don't study health, they study diseases and how to treat them with medicine and surgery. So it's not in their spectrum of knowledge, the average doctor, that's not what they study. The spectrum of knowledge is totally focused on diseases. And then they'll say, well, you've got it because it's genetic. They're not looking at, if you were specializing like Dr. William Lee does in that field, and you started going down that rabbit hole trying to find cures in another area, and you suddenly stumbled across a situation where you can actually grow the telomeres in your DNA, and your genetic makeup changes. You actually change your genetic expression. And what happens is you don't have these diseases anymore. So it's important to really understand. We're getting back to the same thing. I don't want to make it too complicated. That when you create the right environment for your body, even your genetic expression changes. So don't just say, oh, well, that's it. It's genetic. There's nothing I can do about it, because there's lots you can do about it. In a way, it kind of makes it easier for us when we say that, because I can't take responsibility for my health. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm just going to hand my body over and take all these drugs and do nothing, because I'm just, like, my body's in trouble. There's nothing I can do. And that's a terrible road to go down, because you live without hope. And you're completely in the hands of people who are basically trying to fix you with medication. And I so often come across these people. They're on 28 or 30 different drugs, all interacting with each other, and their health is just deteriorating and deteriorating and deteriorating. And the doctors are really trying very hard to help them, but they don't know what to do anymore. And very often they go and change their diet and they change their lifestyle, and the doctor says, look, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever it is, keep doing it because it's the only thing that's working. And that's the amazing thing. Your body will repair itself if you allow it to. It really does, and it will. So thyroid disease is pretty common. It's estimated that about 20 million people just in the United States. I'm always quoting United States figures because America is a country of statistics, and these statistics are pretty up to date all the time. Not many other countries will not be as up to date as they are. Okay, so just in the United States, there are 20 million people living with a thyroid disorders, and women are 5 to 8 times more likely to be diagnosed with thyroid conditions than men. And there's a variety of reasons for that. One of them is that we go on a lot of crazy diets and we use a lot of artificial sweeteners, and dieting and using artificial sweeteners are two of the things that can impact your thyroid negatively as well. So traditionally, the doctor will say you are at risk if you have a family history of thyroid disease. And then they'll say you're at risk if you have a medical condition that can include pernicious anemia, type 1 diabetes, adrenal insufficiency, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, Sjogren's syndrome, and Turner syndrome. Those are autoimmune diseases, okay, where the body appears to be attacking itself. But here's the interesting thing. With all those conditions, rheumatoid arthritis, Sjogren's syndrome, Turner syndrome, I've dealt with them, adrenal insufficiency, lupus, the very same things we do for the thyroid, we do for those conditions, they clear up as well. And it confuses people because very often people say, but I have a different disease. Surely you're not dealing with it in the same way. And I have Turner syndrome, and that's not the thyroid. And I have type 1 diabetes, and that's not the thyroid. No, but it's all the endocrine system. And when you create the right environment, whether you've got any one of these diseases, adrenal insufficiency, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, when you look at the body and you say, what can I do to help the body repair itself? Whether it's thyroid or anything else, it's basically the same principle. There's some little things you can tweak. For example, with thyroid, you need to do a lot more exercise to correct it, but we'll get to that now, okay? So thyroid disease can also be used by taking medication that's high in iodine. They say that you're more likely to get it if you're over 60, and especially if you're a woman. And you're more likely to have thyroid problems if you've had past thyroid problems, or cancer, or radiation, or thyroidectomy. None of this makes any sense to me when I read it, because these don't cause the thyroid problems. They are a result of the body not working properly, and the thyroid just gets caught up in this whole struggle of trying to survive. The body is continually trying to create a balance. It's called homeostasis. It's trying to correct it all the time, and it really struggles. The fact that we don't die by the time we're 5 or 6 years old is actually a miracle. The fact that people live to be 70 or 80 years old is a miracle. But when you I've spoken to several heart specialists that have told me the human heart, if you look at it as a piece of equipment and how it's designed, should last up to 200 years. So, I mean, that's amazing. But because of the things we do to our bodies, we actually affect it in such a way that it just, again, depending on where your genetic weak spot is, that's the thing that's going to flare up, okay? So what causes it? Well, this is the fascinating thing. If you look at what the medical profession is saying, what causes it? Thyroiditis, which is inflammation or swelling of the thyroid gland. Well, inflammation and swelling can't cause a thyroid disease because you've got to go back to it. What's causing the inflammation, okay? What's causing the inflammation? Well, it could be one of 100 different things, and very often it's things in your diet. You take something like gluten in the diet can cause thyroiditis, can cause inflammation. Gluten causes inflammation anywhere in the body. It could be causing anything with an itis at the end, by the way, means inflammation. So whether it's tonsillitis or sinusitis or arthritis, Anything with an itis is inflammation, but the very same things that cause arthritis, gluten can cause arthritis. And we know that gluten, which is the protein found in wheat, oats, rye, and barley grains, not in the leaf. So you can drink the wheatgrass juice and the barley grass juice, which is very beneficial to you. But if you're eating the grain, the thyroid can cause problems. And people say, but that's natural. Why is it doing that? The main reason is because we've overexposed our bodies to it. And then we thought, we human beings think we're so smart, we're going to grow grains that are very high in protein. 1950s and 60s, everybody became very obsessed with having more protein in food. And so they started hybridizing. That's crossbreeding grains with each other. They'd find one that was higher in protein and another one that was higher in protein, crossbreed them, and then they'd find more till eventually they could increase the protein content. And then we were taught that bread is the staff of life. And so what happened, that we would have toast for breakfast, or we'd have wheat-based cereals for breakfast. We'd go to school and have more sandwiches, or we'd be at the office, have a donut. All of that's got wheat in it. And then for lunch, we'd have a pizza, or we'd have some more sandwiches of some description, or a burger on burger buns. It's all got gluten in it. We might have a soup that's been thickened with wheat as a vegetable thickener. And then in the mid-afternoon, we might have a biscuit because our blood sugar is dropping a bit, or a cookie, or a slice of cake, or maybe another donut, or something that's got gluten in it. And then for supper, we would go and have something. We might have cheesecake that's got a crust made with gluten, or it's thickened with flour. Okay, so we could be eating gluten 5 or 6 times a day. If you look at people in rural communities, they eat the grains that are in season. So they might eat wheat only for 3 to 6 months maximum, because you can't store it endlessly. It gets exposed to mold and aflatoxins. So, and then it would be finished, okay? So you would then eat whatever's in season. And because you did that, and you wouldn't eat wheat at every single meal, we've now added wheat and thickening agents, things like gluten, for example, raise the protein content. So they might put gluten into something, into a hamburger patty to expand it. It's a cheap form of protein. So you might have beef in it, but it'll also have gluten in it, okay? So we've been completely overexposed to gluten, and eventually the body can't cope with eating too much of certain things day in and day out. What adds to that is that very often gluten comes into the body with refined sugar. Refined sugar is added to bread to make the yeast rise. Refined sugar is added to, we'll put jam on bread, we'll put icing on a cake. It's added to just about anything that has donuts contain sugar and gluten. And what happens with sugar is refined sugar pushes your blood sugar up. Your body goes into a panic, overproduces insulin. Your body goes into a state and says, we're being attacked. Let's produce antibodies against whatever protein has come in. And the most common protein that comes into the body that affects your blood sugar, because it comes in with sugar, is gluten, because it's in the things we make. And wheat is so easy to bake with. So it's just you make bread rise really easily. It's very difficult to make a gluten-free loaf because it doesn't have the gluten in it, which makes it nice and sticky and allows you to knead it like that. And so it's a very common problem that we develop this gluten intolerance. And once you've produced antibodies against the protein, which is gluten coming in, it's very similar. Gluten is very similar to protein that's in your own body. And what happens, you produce the antibodies to attack the gluten, but it also ends up attacking some of the proteins in the body and some of the organs, and that would include the thyroid gland. Your body starts to attack the thyroid, or appears to attack it, producing these antibodies, but they've actually been produced for gluten, and some of that protein is in the thyroid, and now you've got an autoimmune disease, whether it's there or in any other part of the body. Okay, so these diseases are things like Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Again, it's an inflammation, it's a painless disease. It's an autoimmune condition where the body cells appear to attack the thyroid, okay? And then the medical professional will say, this is an inherited condition. And when you say that, it means really what they mean is we don't know why you've got it, because very often there are no parents or grandparents with the condition at all. And even if there is a parent or parents, very often the grandparents don't have it. Or if the grandparents had it, the great-grandparents never had it at all. So where did it start? It's not like everybody 25 generations back had Hashimoto's disease. It starts with our diet and our lifestyle, because we do things to our body that puts the body under incredible stress, and then it starts to behave in a weird way and attack itself. But in fact, it's because we produced antibodies against the two most common things that cause problems, autoimmune diseases, is the protein in gluten and the protein in cow's milk. And we do the same thing. We'll put cow's milk into the body. Milkshakes and ice creams, for example, you've got refined sugar again, and you've got the protein from cow's milk. So now we start producing antibodies, and those proteins are similar to some of the proteins in the human body. And so the body starts to attack different organs in the body. So it's very important to understand that we develop these autoimmune diseases of the thyroid and any other part of the body because of the way we eat and the way we live. I'm going to tell you now how to undo it, okay? You get postpartum, which is post-pregnancy thyroiditis. It can occur in 5 to 9% of women after childbirth. And then very often people will say to you, I know I was always slim my whole life, and then I had a baby, or in my second child or my third child, I suddenly just put on weight and I can't lose it, and now I'm on thyroid medication. I come from a family where just about every woman I can think of, from aunts, uncles, cousins, sisters, mothers, grandmothers, but definitely not great-grandmothers, were on thyroid medication. And I was going down the same road, exactly the same road, until I changed my lifestyle, and just, the fact that my hands and feet aren't cold anymore, and that I don't have this incredible fluctuation of weight and struggling to lose weight, okay? Iodine deficiency can also cause a thyroid problem, and there's a dietary issue there. And iodine is found basically in nature everywhere. You can find it in kelp in the sea. It's very high in kelp. It's one of the reasons why I encourage people to take barley life, because they put some kelp in it, which is seaweed basically. You can buy, for example, iodized salt. It's not the best way to get it into your body, because you have to eat enormous amounts of salt, which can cause dehydration in the body and a whole lot of other problems. So I would make sure that you get kelp, iodine. It also comes from any basically dark green leafy vegetables, just in smaller quantities than what you get from kelp. But you could have kelp. You can make vegetarian sushi if you want to. And the reason I don't encourage you to make normal sushi with fish is because raw animal products contain a lot of parasites, and parasites are not beneficial to the human body. So if you want to eat fish, rather cook it. It's a better way to eat it. All right, so you need iodine, which is what you get from dark green leafy vegetables. Most people avoid those, and you get it from kelp in the sea. Yes, you do get it from fish in a certain amount, but the kelp, it's raw and it's easier for us to use. But you find it it's a trace element. You need tiny amounts of it, and you find it in most vegetables in certain amounts, because you can also get it in the soil to a certain extent as well. And then this is what they say is causing thyroid problems, is a non-functioning thyroid gland. Sometimes the thyroid gland doesn't work from birth. Now, what do you say? Is that genetic, or is it something that the mom did when she's pregnant? I'm not blaming anybody for their children's thyroid diseases, but we hurtle into life without this operations manual. We've lost the wisdom and knowledge that goes back many years from our grandparents and great-grandparents. And so when we've lost this wisdom going back years and years and years, we're basically just stumbling through life, just eating anything that comes out of any fast food joint, out of any food factory. And you compare it to how 5 or 6 generations, how they ate, was very, very different to the way we overeat a lot as well. It's one of the problems is there's such an abundance of food, we just eat too much as well. And then we'll eat whatever's available while we're on the go, because everybody's working, so we'll just buy from the nearest possible place. So all of that affects us, okay? So if your thyroid gland's not working from birth, there's usually a reason. I've met people with children that are small that don't have, the thyroid doesn't work properly. And I'm also on our 365 program, we've got a parent who has a daughter whose thyroid gland hasn't worked for some while, 17 years old, and she's been on all kinds of things that haven't helped, changed her diet and sorted out her exercise, and her thyroid gland's now starting to work properly, and she's so excited about it. It's so amazing. I haven't found anybody's thyroid gland not improve dramatically if they follow the guidelines that I tell you to follow. It works. But a lot of people don't want to put the effort in. They'd rather just take the pill. So if you're here tonight, this is We'll look at the side effects of the medication as well, okay? All right, so as I said, the medical professional will tell you Graves' disease causes the thyroid to not function. Well, it's not the disease that causes it. The thyroid is diseased with Graves' disease. And that you're producing too much hormone. It's usually overactive and it's enlarged, and they have the goiter problem. And then very often they'll say, well, let's just cut it out. Nodules can be, again, hyperthyroidism can be caused by nodules, but what caused the nodules? That's what we're dealing with. We keep treating the symptoms, not treating the cause. What caused the nodules? What caused it to be overactive, okay? Right. Too much iodine, which can happen. Sometimes too much iodine, that is too much of the mineral, but I mean, you must be eating enormous amounts of kelp and eating so many different things that have got iodine for it to do that again. So the most common cause of having too much iodine is usually from medication. There are different heart medications, for example, cough syrups that contain high levels of iodine that can cause these autoimmune diseases with the thyroid. So the first place I would rather look to is look to lifestyle, look to medication. So many people take so many different drugs and they have no clue what the side effects are. So I wanted to encourage you tonight that if you are on any medication of any kind, take the insert out of the pack and read it. Usually the print is this small, the fine print. So the best way to probably read it is to go online, type your medication in, go to the website of the drug company. They have to list all the side effects there. Read the side effects, maybe print it out and read through it. Sometimes there's a long list and they'll say the most common ones and then not as common and then very rare, but you may have several of those side effects. Very often people do. There's no drug you can take that doesn't have a side effect, okay? Right. So in doing all the research and getting this together, over the years, I've been dealing for many, many years with thyroid issues and encouraging people to get their diet right to help their thyroids work properly, at least the last 30 years. And so I'd look to see if any of the medical sites and any of the information that I had where they encouraged anything to do with changing your lifestyle and diet. And all I found was in this one particular said, there are several things you can do to help the thyroid work optimally, okay? Getting enough sleep, exercising regularly, watching your diet, gluten-free. Well, that wasn't in it. Watching the diet, that's all it said. It said watching the diet. And I'm telling you, gluten-free, dairy-free, low animal protein, no heated fats or processed foods. I'm going to come back to that, okay? So getting enough sleep, exercising regularly, and watching your diet, but no guidelines on how to watch your diet. And what does it mean, watch your diet? Look at your plate and look at what you're eating. And then what? So, right, common symptoms of an overactive thyroid can be anxiety, irritability, nervousness, having trouble sleeping, losing weight, having an enlarged thyroid gland or goiter, having muscle weakness and tremors, experiencing irregular menstrual periods or having your menstrual cycle stop, feeling sensitive to heat, and having vision problems or eye irritation. And that's interesting. Who would have thought your eyes had anything to do with your thyroid? So very often we'll have eye problems or eye irritation, and off we'll go to the doctor or the optometrist and get our glasses and just not even think that the thyroid could be involved with this, okay? So if your thyroid's underactive, then you'll possibly be feeling very tired. You might be gaining weight. You might experience forgetfulness or brain fog. You could have frequent and heavy menstrual periods. Your periods could be very close together. And very often, a lot of young women that I've dealt with actually suffer from excess weight, and they have heavy bleeding as well. And they bleed for 3 weeks at a time, and then they have no period for a week, and then they bleed again, and then nothing for 2 weeks, and then they bleed for 2 weeks. It's just horrendous. We change the diet, we change the lifestyle, it sorts out the menstrual issues as well. And then they start to lose weight. Okay, dry, very dry, coarse hair and hair loss, and dry skin as well. That's another one, could be dry skin. And when I grew up as a kid, every woman I knew in our family had dry hair, dry skin, and just like, I remember actually feeling in winter particularly, I could almost feel like my skin would actually look as if I was a reptile. It used to get this strange like reptilian look from dryness. And I would be smearing on Ingram's camphor cream, which is what my mother gave us when we were young, just it layering on our skin, and it just never made any difference. When I changed my diet, my skin stopped being as dry like that. And it's an interesting thing, because if I was to just, and I have several people I've dealt with, not several, probably hundreds that I've dealt with over the years, when they have dry skin and we take the gluten out of the diet, their skin improves dramatically. Those lines go, the very fine lines running down the cheeks like this, you take the gluten out, it improves dramatically. And you find that they actually look younger. And I know that if I want to age quickly, all I need is a slice of bread, homemade, whole wheat, organic even, every day for 5 days, I'll gain 5 kilograms and I'll gain 10 years on my face. My husband actually says to me, please, whatever you're doing, stop eating the bread. You're looking ancient. I haven't had any gluten in my diet at all for the last 12 to 15 years. It's made a huge difference. Okay, so underactive thyroid, tiredness, gaining weight, forgetfulness, brain fogs, heavy periods. Okay, having a hoarse voice can also do that. Experiencing tolerance to cold temperatures, including cold hands and feet. And another one is seizures, potentially seizures. And you could be diagnosed as being epileptic, and then you're on other hectic drugs, okay? All right, so there are various ways that you can test to see if your thyroid's not working properly. Probably the most accurate would be a blood test, but you can go for a physical examination. The doctor can actually have a look and a certain feel to a certain extent. But the most common one is blood tests, okay? And they test for your thyroid stimulating hormone, T4 and T3. That's basically what they're testing for. Alrighty, let's just see. Okay. So a typical way that you deal with thyroid drugs, if you went to with thyroid problems, if you went to your doctor, what they do is they'll put you on anti-thyroid drugs, depending on if you have high levels of thyroid hormones, this is what it can. So if it's overactive, in other words, if it's hyper, ER, they'll put you on anti-thyroid drugs. These are medications to stop your thyroid from making hormones. Instead of finding out why your thyroid is making too much hormones, we give you medication. Doesn't make any sense. Radioactive iodine, this treatment damages the cells of your thyroid, preventing it from making high levels of thyroid hormones. The problem with it, once you've damaged it, it becomes irreparable very often with something like radiation. Beta blockers, these medications don't change the amount of hormones in your body, but they help you to a certain extent control your symptoms. What your beta blocker will do is stop your heart racing. So you're not solving the problem, you're just treating the symptom, okay? And then surgery, a more permanent form of treatment, very often, and I meet these people very often, is that they just surgically remove your thyroid. Like, we've tried all the drugs, now let's just take it out. Problem with that is that's irreparable damage. You can't undo something like that. And now you're on thyroid medication for the rest of your life. You're taking artificial hormones to replace the ones that you should be making. So, and I've seen people's thyroid spring. They go from overactive, they take the thyroid out, and now they're struggling to regulate it with the medication. You can't stop the medication once your thyroid's been removed. But what you can do is support the rest of your endocrine system by following a healthy lifestyle. Because if you don't have a thyroid, it's going to put pressure on the pituitary gland, which could affect the hypothalamus, which is what feeds into the central nervous system in the brain, could affect the ovaries, the testes, it could affect a whole lot of different areas of the body, your adrenal glands, your parietal cells, which are involved in secreting hydrochloric acid in your digestive tract. So it's very important that you understand that if you're eating properly and you are following a healthy lifestyle, you're going to support the rest of your endocrine system. And so you'll be able to do well on lower amounts of medication, which are, as I say, artificial hormones that are given to people when they can't make any hormones because they don't have the gland anymore. If you still have the gland, you can repair the body. If you don't have your thyroid gland, you can support the rest of the endocrine system. And so you will also see an improvement in your health. So don't think, oh, I don't have a thyroid gland, there's nothing I can do about it. Eat, drink, and be merry because tomorrow I die. There's lots you can do. I've seen people that have been, for example, quadriplegics in wheelchairs. people have said to me, what's the point of feeding them healthy diet? They're paralyzed from the neck down. It's not going to help them. But what happens is if you feed a quadriplegic a healthy diet, then the rest, what works better is the brain and the bowels and the bladder. And you actually find that they become a lot calmer and they're happier and they're less likely to suffer from depression, for example. So I've seen in several people over the years that the family have come and said, cannot believe the difference in the person. They're happier, they're sleeping better at night, they're less likely to get bed sores, just everything starts to improve. So I know I'm speaking about quadriplegic, but it's the same with people that have no thyroid. If you support the body with the right diet and lifestyle, then everything else improves, okay? All right. So there's side effects to taking these drugs. The most common drug that people take is thyroxine, which is a replacement for the hormones that you make, and that, that's your T4. So it increases your appetite, it can cause weight loss, it can cause heat sensitivity, excessive sweating, headaches, hyperactivity, nervousness, anxiety, irritability, mood swings, trouble sleeping. This is what you're taking for the symptoms, okay? To cure your symptoms. Tiredness, tremors, muscle weakness, changes in menstrual periods, hair loss, diarrhea, vomiting, and stomach cramps. Serious side effects are chest pain, shortness of breath, discomfort in your upper body, heart failure, and these symptoms can include shortness of breath, extreme tiredness, swelling in your legs, ankles, and feet, and unexpected weight gain. Very fast heart rate, irregular heart rhythm. All right, gosh. So what can you do? Okay. So if they're going to remove your thyroid, this was I found quite interesting. There's two ways that they can do it. They can actually make an incision in the front of your neck, and you can see people that have a thyroidectomy where they've removed it, that they have a scar here. Not everybody with a scar there, but that usually is. Or they make an incision in your armpit and they work their way through there so that you don't have a scar here. The problem with that is you can damage the body, and it's not risk-free. Making the incision in your armpit is not risk-free. I don't even want to go there, because I think before you even contemplate surgery, do everything to save your thyroid. Really, it's not too late if you've still got your thyroid, and it's not too late if you haven't got it, because you can support the rest of the body, okay? So, all right. I mean, you just take things like how long does it take to recover from the surgery? Never mind anything else, okay? All right. Let me just look at my notes here. So how do you deal with your thyroid naturally, okay? Looking at our time as well. As I explained to you, your thyroid is part of the endocrine system. So anything and everything that affects your endocrine system is going to affect your thyroid in some way or another. You may just end up with a thyroid problem. Somebody else could end up with, as I said, an adrenal gland problem or an ovary, or they might have reproductive issues, ovaries or testes, or the parietal cells causing digestive problems. So treating the thyroid gland without looking at the entire endocrine system, to me, makes no sense. As I said, that's like, just going and changing the oil filter when something else, the whole engine is packing up. You've got to look at the entire system. And you could find that the problem with the car is because, you're putting the wrong fuel into the car. So it's silly treating symptoms and not fixing the actual problem, the root cause of it. And so what we do when we help the body to get healthy, we're treating the root cause of the problem, the root of the problem. All right, so your thyroid is affected by lack of exercise. Your thyroid needs exercise. It needs natural light as well. UV rays help to regulate the pineal gland, which is in the brain, regulating melatonin and serotonin, which will make you sleep properly and make you happy, okay? But those two neurotransmitters also have a very profound effect on the endocrine system. Anything that affects the endocrine system is going to affect the thyroid. So the first thing I tell people when they've got a thyroid problem is, look, until it comes right, you're going to have to need to do about an hour and a half of exercise a day, but not all at once. Split it in two. Because what you're doing is when you go and exercise in the morning for 45 minutes and again in the afternoon, for several hours afterwards, your metabolism is corrected. one of the ways to correct a thyroid problem is to exercise. And I'm not talking about going to gym and pushing weights around. I'm talking about just literally start walking. And if you can walk outdoors, it's the best thing for you to do. Walking is the least damaging to your knees and your joints, and you're going to get your sunlight, okay? But to benefit from natural light, it doesn't have to be sunlight, just natural light, to benefit from it, you've got to make sure that there are no lenses over your eyes. Because even if they're prescription lenses, I've got my reading glasses here. If I was to put my glasses on like that, I would not allow the UV rays from the natural light outside to get to my eyes. But if I pushed it down on my nose like that, they could get into they enter the pupil of your eye, and they have an effect on your pineal gland. Some people say pineal gland, and probably that's the right way because there's only one N. So it corrects that gland, helps you produce enough of melatonin and serotonin. I said those are two neurotransmitters that help the endocrine system work properly. And so we see when people exercise outdoors rather than inside a building, as you would in a gym, and also in the gym, you're not going to get as much aerobic exercise. I know you can on the cycle and run on the treadmill and all that stuff, but outdoors has a very profound effect. We see a much quicker response to the thyroid responds quicker to outdoor exercise. So 45 minutes in the morning, 45. I can see some of you saying, I don't exercise at all. What am I going to do? You start with 5 minutes a day. Start with 5 minutes a day at the same time every day. 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the evening, the same time every single day. Okay? Make sure you're doing that because it's easier to form a habit if you do it at the same time every day. And then you add 5 minutes onto that the week later, morning and evening. So you're doing 10 minutes, 10 minutes. The next week, another 5 minutes. So you're doing 15 minutes and 15 minutes. And then another 5 minutes, 20 minutes. And you build up like that at 5 minutes every week until you're doing 45 minutes a day. All right. That's essential. What people always say to me, what can I take to fix my thyroid? Exercise. Take exercise and take natural light. That's what you need to take. It's top of the list, okay? If you're looking for something else to take, you can take omega-3 fats from the best sources, actually from flax oil, and the best flax oil product that I've ever used because they're nitrogen flushed, so it can't oxidize, because flax oil oxidizes really easily, and then it becomes really bad. It's really not good for the body. Omega-3s are needed for the endocrine system, including the thyroid gland, to function efficiently. If you're not taking enough, the thyroid gland will never work properly. So I recommend you start with 6 omega capsules a day. And if that's not improving enough, like if you find that your eyes are still dry, your skin's still dry, and your hair's still dry after about 3 to 4 weeks, then I would increase it to another 6. You can take up to 18 a day until your thyroid starts to function, and then you start reducing it and go back to 6 a day. That's about your maintenance amount, okay? Something else you can take is barley life. It's the best barley grass on the market in that it contains the highest amount of nutrients because it's grown in a very unique way. Same with the omega. They're the only people I know that nitrogen flush their capsules. And as I said, when you do that, you stop the oil going rancid. All right, so with your barley life, it's the barley grass juice that's been dried, and they've added kelp to that. So you're going to get iodine, natural amounts of iodine. Of course, if your thyroid is overactive initially, I wouldn't take anything that's got iodine in it. So what I would do then is rather have leaf greens, which is other leaves in it without the iodine in it, and you take that until the thyroid's calmed down. I know when I started taking barley life, I found that my heart rate went up initially, and that's what happened. I knew that I had a thyroid problem, but I didn't want to take the medication. So my heart rate initially went up, and I got anxious. So I had to reduce it and take very little, sort of 1/4 teaspoon a day, and then went to 1/2 teaspoon, and then I was able to take 1 to 2 heap teaspoons a day after 3 or 4 months. And I've been doing that for the last 22 years, since 1999, and that's helped my thyroid to function properly. So exercise, barley life, omega, you need those, okay? So you must have the fats, you must exercise, you must get the light, okay? The other reason I take barley life is there's a vitamin E succinate in it. It's a precursor to vitamin E that you only get in sprouted grain. So you can get it in wheatgrass juice, but it's much higher in barley grass juice. If you don't want to buy the barley leaf yourself, you can grow your own barley grass and then get a masticating juice extractor. You probably need about 3 or 4 kilograms per person to make yourself a nice glass of fresh barley grass in the morning. That's entirely up to you. It's just convenient using the powder or the capsules. Vitamin E succinate is a precursor to vitamin E, and it has a profound effect on the pituitary gland. And remember, the pituitary gland is the gland that controls the thyroid gland. Very important to remember that. So you're taking exercise, you're taking natural light, you're taking omega, you're taking barley life. Exercise you're taking is 45 minutes twice a day. You can exercise for more than that if you want to, but a minimum of 45 minutes twice a day is what you're building up to, okay? We know that a high animal protein diet is very detrimental to the thyroid gland. Apparently, the protein actually stops the body producing or binds the T3 and T4 in the cell and actually stops the body from using it efficiently. That's what I could find why it has that effect. But we do know that high protein diets are very damaging to the thyroid. And a lot of people that have been on diets will find the first time they do a high protein diet, high animal protein diet, they'll lose weight. The second time they can't because they've actually messed up their metabolism, affected their thyroid gland. The good news is if you follow these steps that I'm giving you, your thyroid will eventually kick in. Now, here's the thing. It could take anything from 3 to 12 months to get your thyroid working optimally. But I can tell you these steps work. You just have to be patient. 3 to 12 months is not a long time because if you take it, let's say the average woman gets diagnosed or man gets diagnosed at 40. Let's just say it's 40. It's taken you at least 40 years to get your body into a condition where the thyroid is not working properly. And if it's going to take you a year to undo that, that's not a lot of time. It's not going to cost you anything extra. You're not going to be taking medication. You'll be taking barley life and omega, but you're probably taking supplements that aren't helping you anyway. So often people are taking supplements and they're not changing the problem, okay? So a high protein, what is a high protein diet? Anything more than having animal protein more than 1 to 3 times a week. And the animal protein shouldn't be bigger than the size of the palm of your hand. Your palm of your hand dictates how much you should be eating. Fist for carbohydrates, palms for protein. If you're a small person, obviously you eat less. If you're a big person, you eat more. Okay, and that amounts to 1 to 3 times a week. So that would be a piece of chicken or an egg 1 to 3 times that size. Fillet of fish, 1 to 3 times a week maximum is what you're looking at, okay? So you need an animal-free protein diet or an animal protein-free diet or not more than 1 to 3 times. So going whole food plant-based is very beneficial. Some people find that their thyroid doesn't come right until they go completely plant-based, but some people find that reducing their protein helps them if they're doing all these other things. Caffeine affects your thyroid. Alcohol affects your thyroid. Refined and processed sugar affects your thyroid. Artificial sweeteners containing aspartame, such as Candrel, NutraSweet, Equal, Hermesitas, those are some of the brands that contain aspartame. All your diet drinks that you can think of, if it's a diet drink of anything, it contains aspartame. And I'll never forget this woman telling me, I did a talk many years ago on metabolism and weight and the thyroid, and she stood up and she said, my son has been telling me for years that these diet drinks are making me fat. And I used to argue with him. I said to him, what do you know? You keep telling me it makes you fat. He says, Mom, I know I might only be 16 years old, but I've been living with you for 16 years. And I've seen you. You drink those things all day long and you're always on diet and you can never lose weight and you just keep putting on weight. All I can assume is that those diet drinks are making you fat. Smart kid. As the saying goes, hire a teenager. Well, they still know everything. But she realized that at the end of the day, she'd been taking these artificial sweeteners for years. And that's the thing, is if you've been drinking diet cold drinks for the last 20 years, it's not going to take 3 months to undo this problem. It could take a good year. And so it's important that you realize you've got to be patient, okay? And I know a lot of people don't want to be patient. That's why they'll just go and have a drug because they don't want to wait. But honestly, you'll start to see results. It's not that nothing happens. It just doesn't completely fix. It just means that As you're going along, you'll start to notice, oh gosh, my nails are better, and my hair's not so dry, and my eyes are not so dry. That's great. And then you start finding you've got more energy, and then you start finding you're sleeping better. Your mental clarity improves, and it just keeps improving and improving and improving and improving. And usually within a year of following this program closely, most people find it's within 3 months, unless you've got a really long, bad history of it, okay? Heated fats and fried foods, and gluten and dairy protein, okay? So I would, no dairy protein, no gluten, no heated fats. And I hate saying the no-nos like this because it always sounds awful. But if you're looking for a program to go on, we've got a program called the 30-day detox program. And a lot of people have found that they just keep repeating that for 3 to 4 months, that their thyroid problem is gone, and they do these steps that I said, 45 minutes of exercise twice a day, and the natural light with the 30-day detox. Okay, now the 30-day detox program is included in our 365 program, which is what I do encourage people to go onto that program, because the 365 teaches you how your body works, and it doesn't make any sense you just go on the 30-day detox, but you don't really know why you're doing it. It's great. A lot of people can lose weight, but it's a quick way to get onto a program that's completely nutritionally balanced without you having to think about it. Because very often people will say, but I don't want to think about what I'm eating. Whereas a 30-day detox, you get a recipe book, you get told exactly what you've got to eat every single day. And the stricter you are on that, if you do the 30-day detox and you're 100% raw, you see results quicker. If you don't do it completely raw and it's 80% raw, it'll be slightly slower, but you will see change. The 365, why I tell you to go on to, that's our overall program I tell everybody to go on. The 30 days is a program you do on that program, because the first 30 days of the 365 is completely focused on your hormonal system. The first week's an introduction as to why we developed this program and why the pillars that we've built it on are so important. But that first 30 days, you basically really focused on the endocrine system. It really helps you understand how your thyroid is part of something bigger than just being your thyroid, and how it's part of this incredible body that repairs itself. So you really get to grips with the endocrine system on the 365 and the 30-day detox. If you don't go onto the 365, you're not going to have the same understanding that you'd get. And you need to know that, because when you understand your body, you understand how very important it is to help it get well. And you also understand, what you do understand is how this body is working and why it's working in this. And you start to respect it. You not only start to respect your body, you start to trust it. And that's the problem. Most of us don't trust our bodies. We have funny symptoms. We think, oh my word, I'm dying, I'm in pain, I need to take a pill. When you learn about how your body works, you realize that pain is just a sign from your body that something's wrong, and you need to find out what's causing this pain. And then as you watch it start to heal itself and you feel the healing taking place, you start to really trust it. And that brings you to a place where you stop being fearful of your body doing bad things to you. Your body's never going to try and kill you. It's always trying to save you. And its pain is simply, it's putting up a sign saying, please help us. You're doing something to your body you shouldn't be doing, or you're not getting enough essential fatty acids, or you need to be exercising more, whatever. It's very, very important, okay? This program works. I can only tell you that. You have a choice. You can decide to follow a healthy lifestyle and exercise and get the natural light, or you can choose to go the drugs and surgery route. It's your choice at the end of the day. I'm not here to tell you. If it was me, like I did, I chose to change my diet. As I said, I know most of the women in our family are on medication and drugs, and they've had serious issues with their thyroid. Their skin's really dry. They've aged really badly. I just chose this route to go mainly because I had a lot of allergies and suffered from bipolar disorder. Bonus was that my thyroid started working properly. And that's what I'm saying, is when we start to treat our body with the respect and kindness that it deserves, everything starts working properly, not just the thyroid. So I recommend that you get onto the 365 and then you do the 30-day detox based on that. You learn about how your endocrine system works. I recommend that you speak to your facilitator. Your facilitator is the person who sent you the link to get onto this program. Your facilitator is the friend that invited you to get on the program. Whoever that person is, they will help you get onto the program. If you are stuck, you can also just go to info@wholeworldwell.com and you can say, I don't have a facilitator. Nobody told me about this. I just stumbled across it by mistake. Then we will make sure you get into a facilitator group, because what we do on the program is we facilitate somebody who's done the program before you or is on it but is ahead of you will help you, and they'll support you in a sense that you're in a group with other people. So people will be posting what they're eating, so you'll get ideas for recipes. People will encourage you when you're struggling, and you'll say, I'm really struggling today. I'm struggling to even get out of bed. Never mind, do 5 minutes of exercise. People will say, no, I've been there. Don't worry, hang in there. That support is important. And that's part of the reason why we changed our systems, because we found people respond so well to support. Plus, over and above having a facilitator who you can WhatsApp or go onto Google Facebook, one of the Facebook pages, they use whichever social media system works best for them. You can then talk to people on a daily basis. Over and above that, I meet with you on the 365 once a week, every week for 52 weeks of the year, to help you. If you want to ask questions, you get on that program and you get to ask the questions, okay? Right, we've got some questions there, Mark, from some people. Mark's going to tell me what some of the questions are. And I can't see that. Trying to read my husband's handwriting. Can it be caused by trauma? Yes, thyroid can be caused by trauma. In fact, it's one thing that I left out and I shouldn't have. Stress and trauma can cause problems with your thyroid. Chronic stress can do it. Chronic stress is day in and day out. You're in a really bad, emotionally abusive or physically abusive or any kind of just a very stressful. You could be in a bad relationship. You could hate your job. You could hate the work you do. You hate going to work. Chronic stress day in and day out can really affect your thyroid in the same way trauma can as well. Does that mean it's for life? No, it doesn't. It means you need to deal with your trauma. Start exercising. We know that exercising is one of the most powerful natural anti-anxiety and natural antidepressant things that you can do to the body, especially when it's done outdoors, because light has that same effect on the body. So when you start to exercise and you start to get natural light, you find that it's easier for you to recover from trauma, whether it's hectic trauma and now post-traumatic stress disorder and everything else that goes with it. I've never seen the thyroid not respond to healthy change. And some people's thyroid responds slower and others it's faster. But everybody that I've seen follow this program, every single person, their thyroid has started working properly. So yes, stress and trauma can affect your thyroid as well. Nodules on the thyroid, well, they're there because something's wrong with your diet or your lifestyle. Could be from too much iodine because you're on other medication. You don't just get nodules by mistake. Something caused it. So you need to understand how your body works. You have to understand how your body works so you can understand, why would I get these nodules? And it's not just because you inherited the nodules, because, as I said, you can change your genetic expression. So it's very important. The nodules were caused by something else. I can't tell you exactly what it is. It depends. You'll get onto this road of discovery where you start thinking, hold on, I drink diet cold drinks, so maybe that's it. Or I'm using something that's got a preservative or an additive or what's the other one? MSG in it, which can also affect the body to a certain extent. It affects the brain, and if something affects the brain, it's going to affect the pituitary gland, and if the pituitary gland is not working properly, the thyroid's not going to work properly. So yeah, you could have nodules. Doesn't mean that they're there for life. I've seen people's nodules go away. As the thyroid starts functioning properly, the nodules disappear. Iodine in barley life is very, very little. You can actually read it on the label and it will tell you exactly how much iodine is there. When I say very little, it's the average amount that people need, which is tiny, okay? It's a trace element. Trace elements are trace elements. They are found in tiny amounts all over the place. And that's a clear indication that the body needs less. We don't want too much of it, but it's perfectly balanced. And because it's coming from a plant, it's not like taking iodine in a supplement that's been processed out of the plant and putting it in. When you get nutrients in a plant, your body takes what it needs and gets rid of the rest. If you're taking supplements that are in man-made and they're in a pill and they got vitamin C and calcium and iodine, for example, you probably can overdose. So you find, for example, if there's too much vitamin C in a supplement, it could cause gout, arthritis, kidney stones, stomach ulcers, and osteoporosis. But if there's too much vitamin C in your diet and you're eating too much new things, the thing that'll happen is your tongue gets sensitive and you'll stop eating tomatoes and pineapples and oranges because they're highest in vitamin C, and your body will your tongue will just reject it because your tongue is now too sore. So it's always best if you're going to get trace elements from natural things like iodine from seaweed as opposed to iodine in a supplement or in medication, for example. All right. Doing the 365, should you wean yourself off medication? Look, I'm all for weaning off medication. I really am. If it was me, I would wean off, but I can't tell you that's what you've got to do. But the 365 gives you all the tools to manage the process. Because when you understand your body, you know, and I teach you how to listen to your body, and you begin to listen to it, you feel very comfortable reducing medication. If you're nervous about it, then you speak to your doctor. And if your doctor's not comfortable with it because he says there's no way you can come off thyroid medication, absolutely nothing you can do, well, I would find a doctor that you can work with. And I think that's really important, that you find somebody you can work with. There are doctors who will help you wean yourself off medication. So it's important that you, I know many people have weaned themselves off medication over the years. And if you're doing the right things and you're implementing and you're doing the exercise and you're removing the gluten and you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, then your body starts to work better and you can actually feel you're improving, and then you're very comfortable coming off it. I know my mother was on thyroid medication from the age of about 60 to maybe not 60, maybe 65 or 70 until she was 86. And I spoke to the doctor. I said, I can't understand why my mother's on thyroid medication. She wasn't living with me. She was up a lot further away, but she came down to live down here. And I said, I can't understand why she's on thyroid medication. She's got her on altroxin, which is for hypothyroidism, a sluggish thyroid. My mother has a heart rate that is too high. She's anxious and she is underweight. She's lost so much weight. And I said, it's like her metabolism is actually too fast. And the doctor said, well, I'm not quite sure why she's on it, because the doctor down here didn't put her onto it. I just kept renewing her script. So she took a look at her and she said to her, no, when it's finished, just stop. She doesn't have to keep taking it. So I was working with somebody who was very keen, and my mom has actually, her mental conditions improved. She's now going on for 89, and I'm sure she's going to go soon, because she's physically not that strong. And my mother was a party animal, so she has to pay the price. Unfortunately, if you don't look after your body when you're younger, very often Parkinson's is one of them. She has very mild Parkinson's, but it makes her not so steady on her feet. But she's come off all her medication, including thyroid medication. I know many people have come off the medication and they've just weaned themselves off. Hashimoto's disease. I mentioned that, and as I said, you're saying, what can you do? Exactly what I've told you to do. It doesn't matter whether it's Hashimoto's or Graves' disease. You've got to do all of this stuff. Because if you don't do this, you can't fix the endocrine system, then your thyroid will never work properly, okay? It's very, very important that you get the gluten out, you get the dairy out, you do the exercise, everything I've told you tonight to do, okay? So what you need to do, if you've missed some of the things I've been saying because you came in late or you were daydreaming, and I know it's easy. This is a long time to listen to one person, okay? And your mind can wander. So I recommend that you go over and watch this again, and then get onto the 365 and then learn about how your body works so that you understand this, so you don't live in the state of, because we can just own that label. I have Hashimoto's disease and nothing's ever going to change. Everything I've spoken about tonight is exactly what you need to do, and it works. Can it be caused by breast implant illness? Look, here's the problem. Anything toxic that comes into the body, whether it's from leaking from breast implants or it's medication or it's having a general anesthetic or trauma or stress, for example, it could be caused from anything. And having breast implants is traumatic to the body, and the trauma of that, if it was leaking into the body, could cause. There is a potential that it could cause. I haven't personally seen any specific research showing, and I'm going to go and check that out, that it could cause thyroid problems. But I would tell you now that the material that are in the breast implants can affect any part of the hormonal system, because you're putting something in there that shouldn't be there. And they might be fine, and you might have all kinds of guarantees that they're not going to leak, but you never know what's going to happen, because if it's in there for years and years, it could. So I would say, yes, there is a potential that it could possibly cause a problem. Any more questions there, Mark? All right. Just going to have some water. Another 3 minutes. Anything else? Just read them out, Mark.
No, that's it.
That's it. Okay. I am going to say it's been, as always, an honor and a privilege for me to share what I've learned with you, and I hope that you have learned something from it. I hope that I've encouraged you. I recommend that you get onto the 365. It's the program that's going to help you the most, and then get onto the 30-day detox if you want to speed this process up. Otherwise, just stick with the 365. Your facilitator will tell you how to get onto the program. I know that the price is going up. It's a set price, and it's going up in the next 48 hours, I think it is. We finally got our systems working properly, and so we have to put it up. The program itself is worth about 4 times what we're actually going to be charging. So you've got basically 48 hours if you want to get it at the best possible price, which is an absolute steal. And just speak to your facilitator, and they'll tell you how to get onto it. I think it works out to $1 a day or 10 Rand a day, depending on South Africans paying, obviously, Rand. Anybody outside the Rand is, that's the actual price. The price that it is at now, the special price that's available, is less than half of that. Or just, it's not quite less than half in dollars, but it's less than half in rands. Okay, so I'm just encouraging you to get onto the program as fast as you can. Look, you can just go it alone. You don't have to go onto the program. But if you're wanting the support, and you want the books, and you want the recipes, and you want the weekly Q&As, you can ask me questions, Q&As. Anybody who emails and asks questions, we encourage them to go onto the programs, because we've got a system in place to help you. And that's the way that we do it, because we find support works the best. When you go it alone and you don't have the support, it's very difficult to stay on the program, because you get to so many people, and then situations happen, and you go on a holiday, and then you just can't get back. If you've got a support system, it's easy to stay on track, and it's easy to sort this out. God bless you all. Trust your body. Trust your maker, who made a body and gave you an incredible body that can repair itself. Treat your body with kindness and respect. Treat your body well, and it will look after you until a ripe old age, with your brain, your bladder, your bowels, and your thyroid all working properly. I'm going to say thank you and goodbye.